Hello there, this is David from David Books and Comics, and today I want to talk about a Japanese manga, not Lone Wolf and Cub. This is one of the earliest publications by First Publishing of the Lone Wolf and Cub series, with art by Kazuo Koike. The writing is Kazuo Koike, and the artist is Goseki Kojima. And it has an introduction by Eric Van Lustbader, the guy who wrote the ninja novels. This is a dust-jacketed book with a Frank Miller cover. And, of course, this series is available in different editions and a smaller edition from Dark Horse Comics. This was one of the initial publications with color photographs and so on. And it has a forward introduction by the famous writer for the ninja novels, Eric Van Lustbader. Anyway, so I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the Lady Snowblood series, also written by Kazuo Koike. And this is published from Dark Horse Comics. And it's a thick manga. And it came out in Japan in 1971-72. And initially it was serialized in a magazine called Weekly Playboy. Anyway, so I'll give you some of the artwork, show you some of the pictures, the images. They are a typical manga series with very almost surreal type artwork. And this is of course it's published in the Asian style, and I'll show you some of the scenes that aren't too graphic, because it is a very graphic series with the parental advisory sticker on there. And it tells you the origin of the Lady Snowblood and how she was trained by this aloof and very dispassionate sensei in the art of swordplay. It is one of the typical of manga. It flows from picture to picture and image to image. And sometimes, as you see here on this two-page spread, there's very little words, just sounds. The setting of the story of the manga novel takes place around the 1800s. And I think it's called, if I'm not mistaken, the Meiji period, when Japan is beginning to transition from a kind of feudal samurai society into a modern industrialized society. And in a way, this series, she's one of the last and one of the original kind of female samurais to ever appear in the manga series and manga books. The writer, Kazuo Koike, died in the year 2000. He was in his 70s. And Kazuo Kamimura was born in the 1948, and died in the 1980s. He was only in his 40s. But this is his most famous artistic work. So this is volume 1. And it ends with a kind of continuity here. There you go. And it gives you some of the Japanese words that are used in the text. All right. So the part 1 is called Deep-Seated Grudge. So that's Lady Snowblood, Volume 1. And this is Volume 2. Very graphic images. And this is when she was trained in her in the art of sword by the sensei. So it goes back and forth, and it has the recollection and I don't know what it is. The goes back and forth in time, and but it's a beautifully drawn and a very fast-paced read. That as you're flipping through it, you can't help but just enjoy the images that are in the book. So the text, like I said, is all in English, but it reads panel to panel in the manga style. And it has all the action that you tend to see in the manga martial arts series. Similar to this one, to Lone Wolf and Cub. And this is volume 3. Retribution. And basically the story follows about how how her parents were killed. Her mother ended up in prison. It's almost like a story from Alexandre Dumas, The Count of Monte Cristo, where this against almost impossible odds, the mother is falsely accused of a crime and eventually ends up in prison, entrapped by all these 3 or 4 people who want to frame her for murder. Eventually, they murder her father, and she barely survives. Eventually, her mother goes to prison, and in the women's prison, she gives birth to the child. And the child is this lady, Lady Snowblood, and grows up, is trained by this sensei. The sensei had a connection to her parents, and eventually she seeks revenge, basically, and tracks down all of the murderers of her mother, her father, and the ones who sexually assaulted her mother. So, like I said, it has kind of a redemptive theme, and it's more akin to, in my reading, to Alexandre Dumas's The Count of Monte Cristo. Anyway, so this is Retribution Part 1. This is where all the action starts. And like I said, there's many pages of just the artwork being showcased. And then the story begins. All right, so that's volume 3. And this is volume 4, and it would be part 2 of Retribution. And this is when Lady Snowblood seeks her revenge. The villains in the story are just vile characters, but the violence, and the reason why there's this parental advisory is because the violence is pretty extreme. Even though it's in black and white, it's very graphically portrayed. So this came out in 1971, 72. And then, lo and behold, this famous actress, her name is Kaji Mako, played the role of Lady Snowblood in a very violent film, which is not for the faint of heart. So it tells you the basic outline and follows almost accurately how the story in the manga series, just basically is very accurate to the and very faithful to the manga. So it says here, her father, a school teacher, is brutally murdered. Her mother is beaten, raped, and forced into prostitution to survive, only to die giving her life. Basically, in the film and in the book, the manga series, she ends up in prison, and she gives birth to our lead protagonist, the Lady Snowblood, in prison. So it's an excellent film, and it's but with warning. I mean, it is quite violent. And back in the 1970s, the Japanese films tended to show a lot of graphic violence. All right, so that's a short look at that. And I just wanted to show the manga. Didn't want to flip through too much because it's quite, it is graphic in scenes. There's beautiful, it's a contrast between beautiful scenes and sometimes sudden graphic violence. So well worth seeking out for those who enjoy a good swordplay story featuring a woman, and it's a far cry from things like Red Sonja, and even any of the swordswoman stories, or even C.L. Moore's Girel of Jouari. So far more true to the power of the samurai sword, which is a lot sharper edge and more deadly than the heavy broadswords that Girel and Red Sonja carried. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this short presentation. And if you did, remember to give me that like, thumbs up. And thanks everyone for subscribing. And as always, feel free to comment. I will put a link to my other videos, and I will showcase some comic books that have less violence than maybe Lady Snowblood. But still, I hope you enjoyed this short presentation on a very well crafted manga, beautifully drawn despite all the graphic violence, and wonderfully written, thanks to the excellent writing of Kazuo Koike, who's best known for his work on Lone Wolf and Cub. All right, so thanks for watching. And again, as always, feel free to comment. Okay, bye.